Hello and welcome to Chapter 10. Today I'd like to talk about performance appraisal and career management. Have you ever had a performance appraisal done where you've worked? You may have, or have you ever had to actually conduct a performance review on another employee? If you did, kind of think about how'd you feel about the whole process. If you're like most managers and employees, they view this as a fairly negative process. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why and what can go wrong in performance appraisal. We'll also talk about why it's so important and critical to organizations. Here are some interesting statistics. 65% of companies are dissatisfied with their systems. 90% of HR and business executives feel their systems need reform, and 20% of employees believe their systems actually help poor performing employees. That's really kind of sad statistics when you think about it. So we're going to talk about that, the problems and that sort of thing, but performance appraisal is really important and it can actually help an organization. It can stimulate individual and collective productivity, with its emphasis on people, focus on people. It can shape the organization's cultural values. For example, if an organization values attracting and retaining a diverse workforce, it can make this a critical part of its performance evaluation for managers. It's a way to reward excellent performance. Employees like to hear that. It's a way to provide notice to employees who need improvement or development. And it's a really important reason is to identify a baseline for employment decisions. So from performance appraisal, we're going to make decisions on promotion, on merit pay, increase in pay, discharge, layoff, all kinds of personnel decisions are going to be made from this process. And that's why it becomes so important that this is done correctly in all instances. So performance appraisal is just where we identify areas of work that a manager should be examining when measuring performance, and we base this on job analysis. We determine what areas, identify the areas, then we measure those areas and decide how good or bad employee performance was. Then part of it's management. Okay, and management's more than just the past activity. We're looking more future. It's future oriented. What can employees do in the future? How can we improve? It's about continuous improvement. And as I said, performance appraisals are used a lot for administrative reasons. Decisions about employees' working conditions, promotions, terminations, rewards. It's also a validation of selection tools. Remember in Chapter 7 we talked about how selection tools have to be validated, and one way of measuring that is by using the performance appraisal to make sure those employees we're selecting based on selection devices are actually doing a good job. Then it's also used, in addition to administrative reasons, used for developmental reasons to improve performance, strengthen job skills, provide feedback, counseling, decide what training should be done. Okay, so performance appraisals assess the quality of employee performance. It improves job performance. Okay, it monitors behavior and helps managers measure progress. Okay, for instance, if you have employees, you have a bank teller not following company policy and it causes a loss, it helps us monitor that behavior, helps us determine the pay raises. Here again, the administrative part. Also ensures legal compliance. Okay, we have to make sure they're accurate, they're fair, because we're basing all these employment decisions on them. So we have to make sure they're accurate, they're fair. We want to minimize job dissatisfaction and turnover, because these can really affect morale, and morale will affect turnover. You could have turnover problems. So we have to make sure that things are being done accurately and fairly. Okay, the basic goals of performance appraisal is to provide a valid and reliable measure of an employee's performance, to provide a true picture of an employee's performance. But really, the ultimate goal goes beyond that. Like I said, it's to improve performance, it's continuous improvement. So developing a performance appraisal system is very difficult, and the success of it depends on these three things. Okay, the quality of the form itself, we depend a lot on that form. Also the accuracy of the ratings, and lastly legal standards. And we'll talk about each one of these three critical components. Most organizations use a standardized form, and the form has to be relevant and it has to be clear. And by relevant, we mean that the right amount of stuff has to be on there. So criterion deficiency means that something important is not there, and it fails to measure important aspects of the job if we're not measuring something. Criterion contamination is where we put things on that are irrelevant, and that causes an employee to be evaluated unfairly on factors that really aren't even related, to their job. Okay, we need clear performance standards. We need to make sure employees know exactly what's expected of them, because that helps to direct behavior. Okay, and consider the example. If I have a secretary and I tell her or him, answer the phone quickly, what does that mean? Maybe I think in my mind it means on the first ring. You may think it means on the fourth ring. What exactly does that mean? Versus if I say, answer the phone before the third ring. Okay, we all know what that means. So two supervisors can come in and evaluate that metric. We can agree on what that actually means. The second thing is the accuracy of the ratings. Okay, and it's a major problem. These ratings reflect actual job performance, and the reason they sometimes don't is because of rater errors. Okay, and employment decisions that are based on these inaccurate ratings are not valid, and they certainly wouldn't hold up if they were legally challenged. So every rater, every person doing one of these reviews, and you may have done one and experienced some of this, is subject to making common errors, and research has shown that it's best to identify these errors and talk about them. A lot of people don't even realize that they're making errors when they're doing a performance evaluation. So that can be very critical. Okay, so some of the more common errors, and we'll talk about some of these. Leniency is when ratings are unduly high. I rate everybody in my department as excellent, okay? Or the opposite severity. I rate everybody as needing improvement, very low. And lots of different reasons that raters do this. Okay, it could just be lack of conscientiousness or bias. Could be some sort of political reason or self-interest. If I rate all my people really high, they're going to think I'm a really good manager, maybe. Things like that. And these are called distributional errors, leniency and severity. Since raters often lack confidence in defending different ratings between employees, how do they want to defend, Joe getting a 1 and Mary getting a 5, that they may tend to commit the central tendency error, where everyone's given an average rating, okay, down the center. And this creates a problem, kind of rating. If you have a scale of 1 to 5, you rate everyone a 3, okay? And for many reasons, could be administrative, may require extra paperwork if someone is rated very good or not so good. Or they may not know what the ratings mean. What is it to be a number 1? What does that kind of employee look like? Versus what does an employee rated a 5 look like? Okay, so that's central tendency. Then we have the halo effect. This is where the appraiser gets an overall impression of somebody based on a particular characteristic, like intelligence, for instance, or appearance. And they fail to identify specific strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so this overall impression, or this halo, and I think the book also talks about horns being the opposite of halo, where bad things are used to give this overall impression. on a person's, total work. Okay, then we have implicit personality theory. This is where we base um, all behavior on one thing we've observed. It could be a good or bad trait. It could be like conscientiousness, laziness, honesty. So in other words, if I think I've witnessed somebody being conscientious, I'm going to apply that to unobserved behavior. So I think, well, if he's conscientious, then he must also be um, on time, or he also must, pay attention to detail. Okay, so I use that then to I apply that to that unobserved behavior to make a generalization, basically. Also, personal bias. Okay, if job-related results and behaviors aren't the focus of an appraisal, it's easy for managers to allow their impressions of employees and their feelings to kind of dominate the process. And when this happens, you run into issues of adverse impact. Perhaps a protected class could be impacted, and we could expose the organization to some sort of legal liability. Okay, so personal bias. Probably saying, how do we ever get it right? With all these things. Then recency is an issue. And I love memory decay. Okay, that just, I don't know, conjures up all kinds of things. But memory decay, because we don't remember things that happened a long time ago as well as things that happened in the last, few weeks. And this occurs when managers aren't real diligent about measuring performance and documenting things all throughout the performance appraisal period. And you only remember kind of the later things that people do, and then that influences the total ratings. It gives kind of a false picture. Really, the hardest rating problem, at least in my experience and opinion, to correct is inconsistency among raters. And this happens when, one manager in one department is maybe rating a little more severe than a manager in another department. And the problem is that if this especially affects people's wage increases or merit pay, it can lead to a lot of problems, a lot of employee dissatisfaction. Okay, so in cases like this, HR needs to analyze that and determine if there's a significant variance. And there's actually statistical programs that HR can use to tell if this kind of error is happening, in the performance appraisals. So lots of rater errors.